Right? And I'm not playing no games. Yeah.
All right, folks, welcome to another comic talk. We have another indie comic that we can talk about, which is one of my passions. I love doing that stuff too, folks. And with me, as always, another great guest, HOJO, doing his book Mythicals. He's probably just pounding the drum in this. Indiegogo has actually already exceeded their threshold. They're rocking in the description, so you can definitely check all that out. But welcome to the show, my brother. Hopefully, you're doing well.
I am. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So let's get to the beginning. You as the writer, you as the creator, when did you decide? Hey, listen, I want to do like a comic book. I want to have my own like company. I want to do this kind of thing.
Right.
Back up before that, like how did you get to that place, man?
Yeah, just a comic fan my whole life, since I was probably 8 years old, 9 years old, maybe even younger. I came up with this idea when I was in the military over, I would say 2005. So it's been a minute, and I'd already written before then, and just never took the plunge into trying to like either get published or have somebody look at it. People are like, oh, this is good, but I'm not an editor, so prose isn't my thing. I can do it, but
Mm-hmm.
I would say comics are easier. It's just easier, like as far as sentence structure. I have a line editor for that, and that's it. I don't have to like reconceptualize a paragraph or anything like that. But so we got back from a deployment in 2006, and we were gonna. He had an in with CrossGen Comics,
Mm-hmm.
but they were out of business. They filed for bankruptcy. They were belly up. So
Right.
we both looked at each other. And was like, all right, that's dead. Uh, I was thinking, I was like, well, I guess I could shop it to Image, and then I just started laughing to myself. So, life happens. You meet a lady, you get married, you have kids, get a job. Just kept watching.
But you still got that. You still got that in the back of your mind. Like I still
Yeah,
have
like
this
I was
thing
like,
out there.
oh, this would be a good idea. This would, because I already pretty much had a whole thing mapped out. Like I kind of wrote it in reverse, came up with the end, came up with the protagonist, and then filled in the blanks from there over the course of a year over there. And then, but over this whole time, it was just in the back of my mind. And one day I was on Twitter looking at sports stuff, and I saw like Ethan Van Sciver trending. I was like, oh, I know that guy.
Mm-hmm.
He drew Green Lantern, because I remember coming back from a deployment and seeing that in a PX in a spinner rack, and I'd been up for like 23 hours, but I saw the cover. I was like, whoa, Hal Jordan's back. Well, I gotta check this out, and I got it, and I looked at it. Man, I sat in the PX on the ground and just read it like cover to cover, and I was like, oh, that was awesome. So that was the only time I'd really heard of Ethan.
Mm-hmm.
But all of this came to a head, and I just saw him trending. I was like, I clicked on that. I was like, oh, what's going on with him? Hope nothing's wrong. And then I saw everything. I Googled what is XXX, what is dot dot dot, and started poking around. I'm a pretty smart guy. I can read between the lines. And I had no idea all this stuff was going on. The indie stuff, all of it, any of it. I was like, well, indie books are just, they're low quality. It's back then, if somebody had an indie book, he said, my buddy made a book. I'm like, oh, well, I know a guy who can draw better than that, and I definitely could write better than that. So I didn't really have a great worldview because I was never exposed to it. I go to a comic shop, indie books weren't really there. Like back in the day, Vertigo and all that, the like 2000 AD, that was in like a room, kind of like porno or something with like
Yeah,
stuff
you
like
would
that.
definitely put indie stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, you had to go back there, so I didn't know any of that. But then I saw like a cover for a book. I'm like, whoa, that's like Silvestri level stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then just one thing led to another, and I started looking at some podcasts, and the algorithm really forces a person to choose a side.
Mm.
No matter what you're looking for, it directs you to it and feeds you really nothing but that, and then the converse of it to try to get you irritated. So I was like, wow, I'm looking at all these content providers and stuff like that. I'm like, I kind of paid attention to what was going on with Marvel and DC, but I wasn't really paying attention because I got kids. I got a 5-year-old, but he just reads all my trades and looks through all of my stuff like that. He doesn't touch my collection, but he knows a lot more about comic books than your average soon-to-be 5-year-old. I'll tell you that. So, I mean, I saw all this going on, and so man, I can wait a minute. I can do this. But then I was like, well, how do I do this? So I started doing some research. I studied some campaigns and watched what was going on. Looked at some Google Docs on crowdfunding and all that, and sat down, literally made a blueprint, like wrote everything. This is what I do. Made objectives for like X amount of followers by this day. I tried to keep everything at a ramp, but try to ramp it up, and I funded in 13 hours. So
That's awesome.
it's
That's awesome.
I think I just passed 3,300 a little while ago before I was up there with my kids.
Yeah. Let's see. I wanted to see real quick. Kind of just quickly give everybody a little taste, a little dose. Like how did you get to that place to get this? And it's like you branded it as like kind of like that '90s feel. And this is why I got funded.
Yeah.
Look at this. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
It just takes you right back to that era that many collectors just still have such an affinity for. You got all sorts of intricate elements that are in here. All your details on the story and the sample page and that art. Oh, so good. Once you get into the action, guns are blazing, boobs are out, action's there, creatures, monsters, mythicals. This cover. Oh my gosh, this cover. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Peter's quite talented.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. Well, congratulations on that. Glad that's going well. And folks, it's in the description if you want to get a copy for yourself. They even have digital copies for like $8. I mean, so it's like if there's price points for everybody, you get a copy of both covers. I think it's like $22. So even with shipping, very manageable price points. You're not like you're not looking at some major loan that you got to take out to participate in this adventure. So it's awesome. It's great to be part of things.
Yep.
So
economically for people.
Yeah, you just find a way to hit everybody. You have some. There's original art, but you also got like a regular, like a floppy copy. It's great.
Yeah. Yep. And for those that
So you
don't
mentioned
want, the expensive, like the whole page, like I would always, I'd like some original art or something like that. Well, you can get the concept art on there too. So like I threw that up there, and people were like, "Oh, that's a great idea." Because
I saw that as well.
It's like the affordable, the lower art tier, but you're still getting original art. Nobody has this ever. So.
Yeah, I think that there's not a strict set of rules, like you said earlier. Like it was out of the question because I knew somebody who knew somebody at CrossGen, and I kind of laughed myself out of pitching to Image.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of like, well, no, Kickstarter, Indiegogo are their own thing. There's really, there are rules, or there's like a framework of rules, but there's no, not all the doors have been kicked open yet. And if concept art is part of that, I think it's a freaking great idea.
Yeah. And I wasn't trying to step on anybody's toes by lowering the price point or anything like that. I'm looking out for the consumer, and that's the difference about this. You can pitch it, you can take it straight to the consumer. You don't have to go to somebody like, hey, will you let me use your platform? Will you print my books and let these people buy it and make you rich and me just a little bit of money? Or I could just say, hey, here's my book. The more money we make, the better stuff you get, the more issues you'll get. It's a win-win deal. It's really cutting out the middleman.
Well, also, and like you said, it cuts down that sidewalk element where you're like, how do I get 10 books in this shop, and how do I get 10 books in that shop, and will you buy 10, will you buy 20?
Yeah.
That's what was happening back when we were young, man. It's like this stuff was, I don't know, I always felt for those guys. I used to go and do cons, and it was like they'd give you copies. Like if you could just go talk about my book, please go here, just take a copy here, just take it, right? And it was like, and you're right. Some things were okay. Like sometimes you'd find a decent writing story element, but then the art would be bad, or vice versa, or maybe there'd be inconsistencies, things like that. Because it's a people trying to figure out how to level up.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. And with something like this, it's almost like, yeah, sure. There's always going to be leveling up, but at least you're able to, connect with people that want to be, your consumer, your fans, your journey on whatever the Mythicals becomes. Like, who knows? Who knows how far that can go? Yeah, that was awesome. What is, because you mentioned, the 90s flavor in your descriptions and things like that. What is some of the stuff from the '90s that really kind of inspired you in the back of your mind, like as you were creating some of this stuff? Like I kind of had this, man, I love this. That's this. That's this. You know, that kind of thing.
I just liked a lot of the action shots they would use, like the perspectives and the crazy dynamic poses and stuff like that. But even like the field commander in this, like he's on the cover with the guns, like he's almost like a joke about that. Like he's got all the pouches and he's like got
Mm-hmm.
the extreme attitude and the one-liners and stuff like that, and they just shake their head at him because he's like middle aged now. Like he's not like the young peppy commander. He's like former special forces, but he's like the first like human commander of this. But like his dynamic with all these people, like they're just like, dude, Nirvana's not on the radio anymore, stuff like
Gotcha.
that. But it's fun to
It's
play
like
with
it's
that.
like listening to Rob Liefeld if it were happening like in real time. I got you. I understand.
Yeah,
It's okay.
yeah,
I like Rob.
yeah,
I'm good. I
yeah,
got you.
yeah. Rob's a good dude. I like listening to some of his podcasts. But I mean, but I also took the writer's approach to it. Like, okay, well, if I got to work with this superstar artist and I could just tell him, hey, this is what we're gonna do. Just trust me on this one, especially with some of the panels will get descriptive, like with camera angles, just because I want to draw the reader's eye on it in a certain line.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked some of those jagged. That's why I picked my artist, because he would have a lot of these different crazy panel designs, like this little panel within a panel, and then it would be like a jagged, disjointed panel. It's just, that's just like that's metal,
Mm-hmm.
for somebody like me. I was like 10 years old when Image started. Like
I was going to
Superman
ask you
died when
kind
I
of
was like
where
10.
yeah, I was going to try to ask where the timeline is on that. So you're like 10 years old. Oh, I mean,
But I just, yeah,
just
yeah,
pains me, by the way. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
bear
I
with
had
me.
just,
Bear with the old man for a minute while I realize there's a 10-year something gap. That's just
yeah.
pain.
I feel like
Yeah.
that when I'm talking to some of these other guys too. Like, like the guys are up all night. Like I had to watch a movie last night. I'm like, it's like 1 a.m. or something. I'm like, I gotta go, guys.
Oh, I can't do 1 a.m. My
Yeah,
wife teases me at 10 because
yeah.
I start my day at 4 a.m. So
Me
even
too.
on
Me
like
too.
even yeah, it's like a 4 a.m. Like yeah, talk about we'll get to that. So that's like I read all these books and stuff like how do you get motivated, how you do stuff that's creative, how you got to get up at the crack of dawn and get some stuff
Yeah.
done.
Yep. Yep.
Life gets in the way if you don't.
It does.
So you're an early riser as well, huh?
Yeah, because I work like 50 hours a week. So, like, I repair electronics for a living.
Okay.
I get a lot of time sometimes to, like, write down certain ideas, or, like, I'll be running a diagnostic or something. I'll have, like, 10, 15 minutes. I'll, like, answer a tweet. That's why it's easy for me to, like, answer backers and stuff like that. So I can, try to and stay in the chats and stuff and learn as much as I can. And because I never had any friends growing up that were into comics.
Hmm.
I went to the comic shop and there was like nobody there my age or something, but nobody in the scouts were into it, so that's cool. I met one guy one summer and we were into it for a while, but like I never talked to him. But now it's like all this is one big comic shop and people are it's open 24/7. People are
I
constantly
love it.
coming in like, what's up, man? I haven't seen you in a while. Did you read this? I'm like, yeah, it's terrible. I'm like, right?
Yeah, it's exactly how I felt. Like I just I'm coming up on just a year of like just pops, like just the rest of the stuff which is kind of set aside. I'm like, I'm just gonna kind of really drill into this. And it's like I treated it as this is what my comic shop was. And like you said, you'd go into the shops in the 90s. It's like everything was under one roof. I know that's not the most algorithm. I don't care. I'm like,
Yeah,
you go to a comic shop back then, they had D&D and they had
yeah,
models and they had
yeah,
movies and tapes and
yeah,
CDs and we were all just hanging out too. And we're like, oh man, you like that? Oh yeah, I like
yeah,
this. You like
yeah,
this? Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I didn't know you like Godzilla. I'm like, oh yeah,
Oh
but
man, did you see these? They got the Japanese version over here, and
yeah,
they got yeah. No, that's exactly the rabbit holes, man. That's how life was back then. It's like bringing all that back, dusting it off, and bringing it back.
I know. It's just great, but like I was coming off of like a writing perspective, like the art was great and all those image lines, but like nobody really remembers Youngblood #2. That's what I tell people. So I try to tell a cohesive story and just keep people entertained. Like I mean, because
Mhm.
that's missing in comics sometimes. Like comics mainstream now, like they lecture people or they treat that as their social media account. I think Like they're always trying to vent and like, dude, why? But
You've seen it. You've seen enough of my content to know how generic and vanilla.
yeah,
I have a PG-13 channel for Love of Pete, right?
yeah,
I've been blocked by at least a dozen of these people,
I
and I'm
know.
like,
I've
okay,
never talked to you.
I have interviewed some of these people, and I'm blocked. I'm like, okay, I don't understand. Like, you
Yeah,
guys, something's wrong in your bubble. Yeah. So let's unwind what you just said there, because you're talking about the writing part. So it's okay to go to like Rob Liefeld pocket influences, but like what influenced you as a comic writer? You had a writer or two that you were like, oh man, this guy's stuff I couldn't put down.
well, I'm a big fan of Peter David. I like the way he handled X Factor. Even though like I came off like I'd first started reading X Factor in like a year that all that happened, and then they went back to X Men, and Jim Lee had his team, and they
Mm-hmm.
brought in like Strong Guy and like Wolfsbane and Havoc, and I'm like, well, who are these people? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, Peter David. I'm a big Hulk fan, so I knew Peter David from the Hulk. I was like, well, God, I'm excited for this, and it was just, I mean, it was awesome. And I like J. Michael Straczynski. I liked his Spider-Man run with Romita Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a big Babylon 5 fan. So
Yeah, man.
a lot of people, Sheldon from Big Bang Theory doesn't know what he's talking about.
No.
Babylon 5 is good.
So it's a hot take to some. I don't really care. I will admit I watch it with Mrs. Pops, but it's like sometimes I'm just like she hasn't really put two and two together, man. She hasn't realized that some of the episodes get so cringy. That's when I leave and go get ice cream or something, and I'll come back.
Yeah,
Because it's like blackface nerd. It's like
yeah,
blackface fandom. It's like not like the worst one to see your look on your face is they're going to meet Stan Lee and they're all debating about, I can't decide if I want him to sign the first appearance of Doctor Doom. You would never have anyone sign the first appearance.
no,
These books are tens of thousands of
I
dollars or
know.
whatever. It's like, it's
What
so
is wrong with
stupid.
what is wrong with you?
I hate that
It's
episode the
like they just
most.
like Googled the, oh, what would a
Mm-hmm.
nerd say? Dot dot
Yeah.
dot. Come
Yeah.
on, man.
Yeah.
Like it ruined
Yeah.
it all that the other stuff too, like pop culture. Like, see, like in the late '80s or something, early '90s, even the mid '90s, if you saw somebody with like a Silver Surfer T-shirt on, like if I did, I'd be like, hey man, what's up? Where'd you get
Yeah.
that shirt? Now it's just like, oh, I got it at Amazon. They sell it at Walmart. Like
Hot
everybody.
Topic.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
why do you even? It's like the poser thing, you know. It's like, but it was scarce. You know, you couldn't find an Incredible Hulk T-shirt in 1988 unless you knew somebody who could make one,
Mm-hmm.
or you found it at a yard sale or a flea market or something like that. Now they're everywhere now. It's just so commercialized, and I don't know if that's like the old hippie in me coming out. Like,
You're not old enough to say old hippie.
yeah,
But no, I'm with you, bro. I still have a lot of that. That I'm kind of working myself through, and I do have issues with the Big Mouse House, of course, talking
yeah,
about, what they've done to the stuff I love the most.
mm,
I really, because I want to like kind of have some shirts and stuff too, like be able to connect to, like, I have this idea, it's a way to share with people. It's like, oh, look at us, we're like a little club, like we have this little cool shirt idea or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
But we've got to figure out how to unlock some of those doors to make printing more affordable. Like, I don't want to have one of my stupid ideas cost somebody $30. Does
I
that make
know,
sense? You know what I mean?
yeah, yep,
So I've kind of held off on that part of my merch movement, but I love the idea of trying to, and I'd love to find a way to revitalize like the indie side of that. Like, I'd love to have like a cool Crow shirt. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Concrete and Madman and just those weird off things, like that's like us talking nerd to each other without us saying
yeah,
anything.
yeah.
if
Like the
if
old,
we're if we're walking past each other and I got a Madman shirt on and you give me the head nod, we just know we got it. That's
I
all it
saw
takes, man.
somebody with a Malibu comic shirt on like
Oh,
a couple months
yes.
ago. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
anniversary time of Malibu, baby. It's anniversary
yeah,
time of
yeah.
Malibu. This is right before they did Turtles. They cracked it all open and Malibu was happening. Yeah, that's emoji stuff right there.
Yeah, I know, I know.
I got to do a video on Turtles because I just finished Last Ronin finally. I had a cool dude I've met and he just hooked me up with the hard copy. So
Yeah,
I got to do a review because I hadn't gotten it. It was,
I,
yeah.
I think my mom got it for me. Yeah, it's still in the plastic. Like I haven't
Oh,
opened it.
Last Ronin's worth
Yeah,
read. Is it hardcover?
yeah, Yeah,
Yeah, you won't mess it up. It'll be fine.
yeah,
She
yeah.
didn't buy you the San Diego Comic-Con one. She bought you the regular one, right?
No, just a regular one. No, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I just haven't had time to read it. I don't have time to do much. I have 2 children, 5 and 2. So,
I understand.
and you know,
I have 5 kids, so I've been there. I
yeah,
got you,
yeah.
bro. Yeah, I understand.
There will not be a third. I can promise you that.
There is a lot of life's demands trying to judge, which I think is really what's cool about being on a chance to talk to you about pulling this off. It's like you still got some ways to go. There's still lettering and coloring and all this
Yeah,
stuff, right? I got all that, but your baby's coming to life, and that's got
yeah.
to be a cool experience. So, what was it like to see some of those first pages?
Oh my God! Like the first penciled page, it was he didn't start in order, which
Yeah.
was a little weird because I told him, I said, I'm gonna get you to draw these 5 pages first because I need panels for the trailer, you know.
Mhm.
So he drew them out of order, but the first one it's like page 3, and it's just the first shot of her turning around looking at the camera, and I was just like, or the reader, and I was like, oh, there she is. That's her because we had gone over through a few revisions and kind of gave him like a Debbie Harry reference
Mhm.
as far as facial and like bone structure and stuff, and like one came out looking a little slightly too Asian, and then we settled on this last design, and like I was like Thomas, man, that's it, pro effing Seed, let's go. And then like when I got the first inks back from it because I used that as the test page for like when I was trying to find an inker,
Mhm.
and the guy that I hired, it was like, is this guy named Thomas? I was like, yeah. He said, oh yeah, I've worked with him before. I was like, well, that's great because you already have a little bit of familiarity. You guys. He's like, yeah, we're good at communicating on that. And then he recommended. He's out of Brazil, the inker, and then he recommended a friend of his on colors, and we did a sample page, and that was it. And then took me a little bit. I got with a guy that used to work for Alterna. I think he's done some work for Alterna Comics for Peter Simeti, Rick Joseph.
Okay.
He's in French Canada, so he liked the project, and there we go. So we have all of it's penciled and inked, and
Has it been kind of cool to see your side self as part of all this revolution? Because let's be honest, I mean, the industry is so broken. A lot of people have likened it because we're exactly 30 years after Image, right? We're
yeah,
exactly 30 years later, and here we are having ISOM and Comicsgate and Indiegogo and Kickstarter. And I just did a review that drops maybe as early as tomorrow. I don't have the posting schedule in front of me. I do one it's called Isolation. I don't know if you've heard of Reggie Collects or not. He does more like high end comic book investing and grading and stuff like that. But he published this comic book. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. How do I get my hands on one of these things? How do I figure this out? So it's like everything has just shifted really, really quickly. And I don't even think the big two know it. There, you have these artists and stuff behaving badly on Twitter, but I don't think the industry quite gets. You do realize that we've all kind of moved on. We can just cherry pick out of what you people do,
yeah,
but we can just keep doing our own stuff too.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they created all. They did it to themselves. Like you talk about the image revolution. They did it to themselves by treating their talent shitty.
Mm-hmm.
And so they walked and they're like, all right, we're going to do this. We're going to start this. We're going to grab all these people that we know and poach all this talent and bring them all over to our studios and network together and have this company. Flash forward 30 years later, a little bit less, starting to treat your talent like shit just because of what they do in their spare time or who they talk to or who they talk about or who they vote for. And then you start to demonize a certain part of your audience that doesn't like a certain thing you do, and then you push that one thing that drove those people away, and then you try to shame them, and you use these characters to get whatever, work out whatever issues and therapy you need to do, instead of telling a good story and having reverence for this source material and these characters. Because the people they're hired now did not grow up reading comic books. They did not grow up reading these characters. Like the generation before them, like the Burns and the Claremonts and all those. They
Yep.
grew up in this, loving this industry. They're like, I want to be a comic book artist
Mm-hmm.
/ or writer. These people, when they grow up, I want to be known, or I want to be an activist, and I want
Yep.
people, I want to fight for X amount. Okay, well then you're in the wrong job.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's people slot it in all the wrong directions. It's just it makes a little sense to me. And so you mentioned it earlier too, like the whole comic shop idea a little bit too, because I feel like now more than ever, and I really have shifted my tone dramatically at the first of the year, which in some ways has been negative, but it's okay. I don't care. I'm having more fun now than I was even before.
Yeah.
And that's is it's like talking about stuff that's good, like trying to find the nuggets. You know what I mean? Just published my review last week of The King of Spies by Mark Millar, and I learned about that through Wakazashi's Tea House, who's my comic talk that drops tomorrow. And it's like that's the kind of stuff I have to do also, and then try to carve out the time where I analyze why this over here is crap. And then I got
Right.
to find a way to make time to promote things like what you're doing. Go, listen, there's also this guy. He's
Yeah.
doing this thing. Isn't this kind
Yep.
of cool?
Yep.
And, and learn from this guy. Listen to what he has to say, talks about his life experiences and what motivated him and things like that. I think it's really kind of a cool experience to be a part of, man. I don't know if you take a pause and realize, hey, man, I'm kind of part of this crazy
It
wave.
is.
This is
Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah, because now instead of like breaking away and X amount, all these people uh disaffecting these creators, that they come and start their own company or whatever digitally and start a movement there, like this, like whether it be Comicsgate or other, like the iconic people, all those people doing their own things without the mainstream, because they force them to do this, because like, okay, look, we're going to do this ourselves because now we know what to do. You dropped the ball, you stumbled, we're going to pick this up now, and we're going to take it and run with it, and this is the next generation, because we don't need them to publish we don't have to go to them and say, hey, will you let me put my story on your paper and you give it to people. Now we can just go to these people and say, we're going to do this. Here is our product. We can cut out the middleman completely.
I think it's even bigger than that, because you can just do
We're
what you want to do.
supporting you.
You could just
Yeah.
completely suck, but if you had 1,000 people to give you enough money to put out your crappy stuff, then so be it. Who cares?
Yeah.
You don't have to go toting around your portfolio at like a Comic-Con and have somebody look at your writing or your art to see if you're good enough. It's like, you can just do your own freaking thing. Who cares? Why even deal with those two
I
other than
know. I
other
know.
than cloud? Yeah.
And I think that's what it is. It's just like it's like a prestige job now. It's like people want to work for Marvel or DC because it's Marvel and DC, not because of what they have under their roof. Like they're not interested in. Oh, I want
See,
to
I
write.
could never do it because I know they wouldn't leave me alone.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Like,
know what I
oh, I
mean? It'd
want
be
to
like,
go and write this
yeah.
character, and then they don't want to do that. They're like, oh, well, they're not important, or change that character and make them look like this, or
Mhm.
something. I'm like, well, no, that's not what I wanted to do. Well, we hired you to do what we want to do, and we don't really know how to do it. That's what you are, dance monkey. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, that's true. Because, and I wanted to use this example, then go back to what you said earlier about your book when that was, because I started reading Batman again, looked at issue 130. For 3 or 4 issues, it wasn't too bad. And I really was hooked on the art. I thought Jorge Jimenez did this great, like 90s Justice League style art. Like it was really good. And then once you get to the end, it didn't stick the landing. The story didn't stick the landing.
Yeah.
But then when that story arc ends, they get a new artist, and it was dramatically different art. And I don't mean like a little bit, like it's dramatically different. Like we started getting, I mean, it's not full on pink and purple pastels, but it's a lot
Yeah.
more of them. And it's
Right.
like,
Right.
wait, what happened to the primary colors?
Yeah.
So when you were putting together Mythical, how far out did you go with obviously you have to really focus on getting your first issue under your belt,
Hmm.
but how far out have you drafted out like outlines and plans, and I don't want to say issues, but how far
Yeah.
out do you think you have going with your story and stuff like that?
Well, it says it's first of 13 issues, so
Okay.
all 13 are plotted out completely. I know how it ends. I know I
Okay.
have probably like 2 pages on each one with just where I'll write the dialogue or something. If something pops in my head when I'm reading, when
Mhm.
I'm trying to draft it or something. But I have 6 scripts already written,
Okay.
and that I'd say pretty much halfway done. I just know like the 13th issue, if I get that far, it's like a double size because I came up with a great idea and I had to extend the story, and it's really, as Lebowski said, it really ties the room together.
It does.
So
It's the rug. It's the giant size
yeah,
rug
yeah,
issue. So,
yeah.
are you happy with the way the art and the ink and everything's come together to keep that ball rolling? You really happy?
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty harmonious to be honest. Like they work pretty well together. I mean, they're a little. Nothing's gonna be flawless with 24 pages. Like probably nothing's gonna be like the relationship and the kind of artist man. They're gonna artist, so they can bump heads all they want. I'm just there like I'm the saucer under the teacup. I'm just trying to keep it from boiling over. Like, and then the colorist is like, hey, I'm just waiting on you guys.
Mm.
So, but yeah, it's a pretty great process. And there are things I would change. Yeah, I mean, I should have had character sheets already mocked up. I try to do like an after action report after all this. I'm like, what did 3 ups, 3 down? What did I do wrong? What did I do right?
Hmm.
So I would definitely. We're actually just doing that now. The inker is like, yeah, I'll do it. I got nothing else to do right now. So we're working on some because there are characters in issue 2 that aren't
Right.
in issue 1.
Okay.
So we're just
Okay.
gonna go
I
ahead
got
and
you
do
now.
that now. Yeah.
So, I love always asking this too because it's always just odd. As someone who's done entertainment type work in some facet of like a side hustle, what's like the family's response to all this? How was that? How did that all kind of go?
My wife's an accountant. How do you think it goes?
You're, well, you somehow stayed married, so
Yeah, yeah,
that's freaking
yeah.
great.
Still got it. You got the pride from my dead cold hand. But no, I explained to her and I said, well, it's going to take this much. I had a dollar amount of how much is going to produce the book. Actually,
Yeah.
the book. That's not perks. That's not shipping. That's not um, packing materials. Yada yada yada.
Hmm.
And I had to start the LLC. Well, I didn't have to, but it's. I mean, if you're gonna do this, do it right, because there are other projects that'll come out eventually. And so she's like, okay, okay, and then it's like, well, I'm gonna have to up the budget to this, and she's like, okay. And then I was like, just don't even tell me how far over budget is. I'm gonna tell you my target amount, and if I get this target amount, are you cool with it? And she's like, yes. So it's been a little trying having to go downstairs before my kids are about to go to bed, and I got to give them a hug 30 minutes early. But she gets it. She didn't get it at first, but launch night she got it. Like, and I just looked at her. I turned around. I said, "Hard work, dedication, perseverance. That's really it'll get you through it. I mean, you have to. It's never too late to follow your dream. And
Hmm.
this is America. If it can happen, if it's gonna happen anywhere, it's probably here. To do something like this.
Well, it's just such a fun adventure to kind of go on, right?
Yeah, because I'm just blown away sometimes. Like this, some fan arts come in, and I've come up with cool ideas. I'm like, well, what if we do this? And then this guy, like for one of the perks, like the bookmark, I'm like, what if we do this? And he's like, oh my god, that's brilliant. I'm like, that's just fun. It's fun, like especially as a fan. If you're a fan all the time, like, what if you got like an extra, like a trading card in with the issue you got mailed with you for your subscription,
Yeah, yeah.
subscription or something.
No, I think it's great. I think cards are huge. I mean, you yeah. Those of you who are not watching it, yeah, I still have cards on my desk. These are Marvel cards from 1993. Here's Blade. Anyway, so I love cards nearly as much, maybe even more than the comics in some way.
Yeah,
From
and I even did that like the Marvel. I put like a biographical tomato on the back, like almost like a power
Mhm.
set, like the bar graph. It's
Yeah.
like,
Somebody did one that was very retro. It may have been Andy Smith's cards. One of them looked just like 90s Marvel cards. Like
yeah,
he
Luke
obviously
Stone did that
clearly
too.
lifted. Yeah.
Yeah,
What's that? Yeah.
I got some from Luke Stone too. He did the same thing. I was like, well, I
Yeah.
don't want to do that, so I try to be a little different.
Well, I don't mind.
Yeah,
I'm good. Literally, if that's the vision that you want, man, you
yeah.
roll with what makes you happy and
Well, I
you
told him,
feel
I
good
said
about it.
there will be a day when I actually do that, and I'm gonna actually do, because I had the first 2 series of the Marvel cards in the '90s, and I got the holograms like
Mhm.
naturally too. I didn't have to go buy any of that stuff. I bought so many packs. My mom was so mad.
I bet I've been there. Yeah, I got a box of X-Men right here on the shelf behind me that we're gonna try to bust open here soon. So, uh, let me think about how to frame the fan fiction part, because like we were having a stream and we ended up down the rabbit holes of these fan fiction ideas and that kind of thing. What would you tell someone who has like these, oh, I'd like to do this? It's like, how do you steer them towards turning something like that into reality? How do they start? Like, how did you? I know you've got this lifelong passion project in some ways,
Right.
but in reality, is a lot of folks that are watching this maybe struggling with, oh, I can't do it. I'm not this guy. And this, what's some advice you'd have for those people to get a little boot in the behind to say, listen, man, it's the gap between fan fiction and this just keeps getting smaller and smaller, man. You just
Oh
got to
yeah.
think a certain way.
Yeah, I know a guy, Cooper Telepathic Bunny. He started writing fan fiction. He's writing a comic right now.
Mm-hmm.
His whole channel is devoted to writing. But I mean, with me, I mean, I don't even know if you call it fan fiction. It used to be this White Wolf. It was like the LARPing, like the RPG, and it was called like Vampire the Masquerade
Oh yeah, it's
and
huge.
Werewolf the Apocalypse. Okay, well, I had a bunch of friends into that. I just like looking at their storybooks, like the art and stuff. I'm like, oh, these pencils are phenomenal, man. These like their source books and like it would talk about their clans. I'm like, it's almost like reading a history book. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I was like, so what happened? And I'm like, well, I'm not gonna go out and do that with you, but I was like, what about if I write like your character sheet or something? It's like you're making up a character and you
Mm-hmm.
write all this stuff about it, and I just invent this person. And like, he was like, man, this is fucking awesome. So he gave it to all his friends, and then it's like, they tell their friends, they tell their friends. And then one time I remember in a weekend, I said and did probably almost 20 of those things for this whole group of people in like a city near me that it was like an underground scene, like they came to me, like I got, it's so 90s. I got like all these things on my pager, like my mom thought I was a drug dealer or something. And I was like, no, no, it's
People
actually
doing D&D and
yeah,
role
it's like
play stuff, RPGs.
they want me to write stuff, mom. She's like, mm-hmm. So I did that, and I just got really into it because I'm into like the horror stuff. Like I love the '80s stuff. I love the Hammer horror films.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff's pretty cool. The supernatural is, it's fascinating, and just because my mom let me watch scary movies when I was like 4 and 5, and it changes your DNA, I think.
It does.
So
It does mess with us quite a bit, actually. So,
yeah,
no, I agree. I would rather be the dungeon master and write stories and adventure stuff than I would be the other stuff. Just that's how my brain works too. So,
yeah, yeah,
uh, yeah, no, it's awesome. I think that there's something to be said about what you said earlier too, the writing constantly phase. Like do you have like a notepad? Because you talked about like I got 10 or 15 minutes here. I got this idea. You just
yeah.
constantly,
I got a
you
lot of spiral bound notebooks.
just constantly carrying the
Yeah,
notepads
yeah.
and yeah, okay.
And now, like on your phone, you just have this like a note app. You just sit there, you
Hmm.
can just like dictate it and like blah blah blah. Well, he does this. What if I do this? Like if you
Okay.
would look at this thing, it would just be so funny. Like oh god, what's this? What's wrong with this guy? He's got some kind of disorder.
Well, it's in my car, but I've told this story before because I have. All, Mrs. Pops got me the 5-ring binder. Remember the old
Mm.
the old
Oh
school?
yeah,
We
oh
found them at
yeah,
like a clearance, like an Ollie's, and yeah, she take all of this stuff and please just put it in one thing.
yeah,
So
yeah.
she had to do that for me, and that helped me because that's how that birthed my version of what become my Google Doc, which drives
Okay,
pretty much
yeah,
all of Pops. So I had to have
yeah,
a spiral book to get it together,
yeah,
and then yeah.
yeah. Digitize it all. Yeah,
Yeah, I still have the book and the spiral, but that's like the brainstorming, like you were saying. I'll take all of these little scribbles, they go there first and sort it into little categories,
oh
and they.
yes, yeah. Because
Mhm.
I'll write it on the page and I'll write something, and then because it's in ink, and then I'll go down and it's like 5 lines down. But oh, I forgot to write this, so I'll write it and I'll circle it, and then I'll write an arrow up to there. It's almost like I'm looking like I'm editing my own notes or something. Sometimes
Yep.
you can look at it. My wife will be like, "What is this?" But don't worry about it.
Yeah, I do footnotes that
It's
way.
like
I'll
a
like
it's like a treasure
instead of doing
map.
the arrow, I'll put like a 1 and a 0, and I'll
Yeah.
go back and I put 1, and so like the 1 goes there, and the 2 goes
Yes.
here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, writing 101 tricks of how to,
Yeah.
yeah, when you're using ink.
But
Yeah.
a lot of my friends that are in like the writing world and the editing world, they even say the mainstream right now, what they're doing, they call it fan fiction. Like they said, it's not even like they use that as a as a
A pejorative, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, well, no, I wouldn't say that. It's just they don't know what they're doing with it. You shouldn't crap on the idea of fan fiction because, I mean, if you can write somebody else's character, I mean, you're still a writer. Just take what makes that element of that character, right? You know, you like, what are their motivations? What do they do? What do they want? Why are they
Hmm.
here? Who are they? Okay, answer those questions and then think of something cool to answer in all those questions. You got yourself your own original character, and then you can start going from there. You can either go forward or backwards. Because
Hmm.
the Mythicals, I kind of wrote the ending of like, what if I had X do Y?
Hmm.
And I was like, oh. And then I started filling in the blanks. I'm like, when I came up with Nancy, I like from Nightmare on Elm Street. I gave her a Cindy Crawford mole because I grew up in the early '90s and Cindy Crawford was everywhere.
Yep.
You know, so it is what the story. It's whatever you want it to be. It's your world. It's your sandbox. Like with these characters, like I can just press play and like you could give me three hypotheticals and I could give you probably a 15. I could tell you exactly how every person in that room and on this roster would react to it. If you just said a statement, what they would all say. Somebody would crack a joke, the other guy would be like, "I'm not answering that."
Right.
You just got to know your characters like inside and out, and that's what makes Peter David so great at what he did because everybody in that early X Factor run had their own voice. Quicksilver was I thought Quicksilver was lame until I read that.
Yeah, the X universe, and it's funny you say all this too because my What's Your Story this week is Padawannabe, who was this X-Men collector first and foremost, and it originally started as a comic talk, and it kind of evolved into, isn't this kind of like what we all want? We all want, like you said earlier, no one around me was doing comic books, so it's partly a lot of us just sharing our love and our passions. Because I've been invited on a couple streams now where people are like, just come on and talk about the toys that you have, and just come on and talk about this. And I'm like, so a lot of that love, I think, has also been rejuvenated in kind of all this YouTube space stuff that's happened. And
Yeah,
um,
it's giving
what are
everybody
some
a
of the
voice.
yeah, right, exactly. Here, yeah, giving collectors a voice, right? Is that definitely part of it that didn't exist before?
Yeah,
Because before everybody was still on the outside looking in a lot of ways, and now it's sort of like it's a lot more blended in some ways. So,
a lot of
you,
Venn diagrams intersect.
yes, Venn diagram references. Good job, man. I'm all down with that. So talk a little bit about like what's the other stuff that like drives you as far as you still collect anything? You still read anything? What are you still sort of kind of like in? I know you're juggling a lot of stuff with like, life priorities and that kind of thing. Of course, you're
Yeah.
publishing a comic book in the middle of having preschoolers is massive, massive challenge. So kudos to you and the missus in that regard.
Yeah, thanks, man. Um, well, I mean, what drives me, like, I mean, good storytelling. I mean, I don't care where it comes from. Like, probably we did watch a show not too long ago with Jeff Bridges. It was called The Old Man.
Yep, yeah, we did a video
I
on
think
that.
that was a great show. I think that was phenomenal. Even though I can't really see him as anything but Lebowski now. That's another Lebowski reference. That's weird. Um, so I mean, I read a lot of historical uh, books. Like I minored in history in college, so and that's a lot of that poured into my book too. Like almost like some Indiana Jones type stuff. And but like I just read Bill O'Reilly's "Killing Crazy Horse,"
Hmm.
so
Okay.
that's a good book. Sad, but you know, scars are scars. You don't need to. It happened, so. But almost like historical thrillers and stuff like that. Like I read this book called the Lincoln Letter. I think that's the last
Hmm.
actual print book I read, and it was really really good. I wish I could make a movie out of that. But
Okay.
yeah,
Very
other than
cool.
that, most of my stuff is Audible stuff like on tape,
Hmm.
or at work.
You've gone digital. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
that's
kind of
cool.
have to at work because I don't have any time at home.
Yeah. No, I understand. I have kind of this weird hybrid of what's still physical and what's digital. And
Yeah,
similar reason I can get certain things. I tend to be a bit of a lurker on a lot of YouTube content, and I get teased for listening to stuff at 1.5 to 2 speed. So yeah,
oh, I
there's
do
that
that.
too.
Don't worry about that. There's this show called Biographics. They're like these little 30-minute spiels on like a historical thing. I'll listen at like twice the speed and be like, all right, well I
Yeah,
got that done.
yeah, yeah. So All right. Well, folks, everything is in the description. You can definitely follow your links over to Indiegogo. You can get yourself copies. I mean, literally, the super pack, the jumbo box thing is like $65. So it's not like this is a small fortune or anything like that. And, listen, 90s is definitely the best way to describe this. This is what drew me in. It's like the art, the action, boobs and guns and creatures. And yeah, I was there. I'm all down with all this kind of stuff. So I'm having a good time with it. I can't wait to have my own and, physical copy as well. So been awesome talking to you about that. So as we close, one last word of advice you'd have for somebody out there, comic book creator, wanting to do their thing, maybe from the business side of it, because obviously once you do this, you're kind of like the publisher. I always go back to Graham Nolan said, I wasn't quite ready for like the multitude of hats, like in the same day. And I got to put this hat on for this problem. I got to put this hat on for that problem. I got to put this hat on for that problem, because that was his hardest thing. Was like it wasn't just doing different things. It was like within the same day, I have to deal with. And I'm like, okay, that's important to know. So what's it like been like for you, man?
Too. Well, I mean, I haven't fulfilled yet, but yeah, and it is a lot of hats because during the production side, the first thing I would say if you're going to start on any of this, especially if you're a writer, get an editor that edits in your kind of genre and stuff like that you like doing. Make sure you guys get along well. But other than that, yeah, I mean, you have to be cognizant sometimes that, and pick an art team that can payment services or kosher with you. Like, say, there's a lot of places in Africa that have got a lot of talent, but they can't use PayPal, and the fees will kind of eat you up. It's going to end up costing you more. But make sure you get make sure your inker, that if you have a separate inker and a penciler, make sure they can work well together. And it's really there's a lot of hats, like you said. And you have to worry about payments, and some people want 50% up front. Don't ever... I mean, me personally, I would never pay for everything up front unless I know the person. Like, actually know them, and had worked with them before or something. Don't just say, give $300 to someone and be like, see you. And if you don't hear from them in 2 weeks, probably not a great idea. Communication is key. Don't expect artists. When they say it's going to be done the 15th, check with them on the 13th and make sure we're still on track. That way, you can make arrangements.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of time management. It's a lot of keeping track of where you are and having action items and action plans along the way. It's a lot to do. So, HOJO, my brother, thank you so much for doing this with me, man. It's been kind of cool to get to know you more, get to know the stuff, things like that. And hopefully everybody here, make sure you take a pause and check out their stuff, see if it's a good fit for you. And listen, guys, if you are, love your comments and feedback in the chat. I know you guys are blowing things up if we do this as a premiere. So, we'll love to see all that kind of stuff evolve. That's always fun. But thank you again for watching. Appreciate you guys so much. I am Pops.
I mean, this is going to make E.T. look like Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know what I'm saying?
What is Pops doing?
Caution everyone to watch out for pies.
At this point, anything is possible, so yes, pies, seltzer bottles, balloon animals, be alert.
Our shenanigans are cheeky and fun.
Yeah, I mean, his shenanigans are cruel and tragic.
I